It's the opening round of the NBA playoffs. We have so many matchups to dissect, games to break down, storylines across the NBA. I'm your host, Sebastian Fonseca. This is Spectator Sports. Please do us a massive favor. In order to help us grow, reach new audiences, we need you guys' help. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you want clips from this episode, you can come here on YouTube. We also have it on TikTok and Instagram, and you can get the audio from this podcast on Spotify. Full links are in the description. Let's rewind to recap the last bit of the play-in action to set up the current playoff matchups. The Warriors were fringe contenders to even start this season, and we knew that it was going to be an uphill battle to get out of the play-in tournament. Well, they ended the season on a sad note. Klay Thompson goes 0 for 10. Steph Curry is a little quiet, not a dominant performance like last year when he went off for 50 points against the Kings. The Warriors bow out. They get routed on the road in Sacramento, and they're eliminated from playoff contention. Just 2 years ago, they won it all, and we thought, is the Dynasty back? Is it still going? Can it still go on? But that still ended on a very sour note. This Warriors team isn't going to be the same moving forward. In 2019, Kevin Durant tore his Achilles in a matchup against the Toronto Raptors, and that set up his eventual exit out of the Golden State Warriors to move to Brooklyn. And we thought at that point, the Warriors are a different team. A few years later, they win the championship in 2022. They made some moves along the way. They brought in Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole, and as Klay Thompson was recovering from devastating knee and Achilles injuries himself, those two guys were able to supplant his production. They brought in some defense and wing scoring from both Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins. Now, along the way, Klay Thompson returned, and that was an extra boost as they defeated the Boston Celtics in 6 games in 2022. Going into the season, we thought maybe they're repeat favorites over there in Golden State. But with a single punch from Draymond losing his cool, countless ejections and suspensions later, here we are. The Golden State Warriors are out of the playoffs altogether. And there's a lot of factors into this. Is it father time getting at Klay Thompson, the injuries that continue to pile up? Is it the Draymond Green controversies on and off the court? We don't know. There's a lot of things to attribute to this, but it's also with the Warriors management, right? They drafted so many good young players, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Jordan Poole, and James Wiseman, for example. They used a lot of draft picks for that. They tried to develop the next core to help Steph Curry on the back end of his career. But coaching, management, they still wanted to play their older guys, their vets, and that didn't allow these younger guys to flourish in roles that they really needed to do in order to get those key minutes in big-time playoff moments. We saw them get relegated to the bench, a lot of DMP, coaches' decisions, and they went with older guys. And it wasn't until this year that Klay Thompson, who desperately needed to be benched, and they gave way for the rookie to take over in his shooting guard spot. Now, he's probably not going to be the same Hall of Famer that Klay Thompson will inevitably be, but it still means that Pods is going to be a very solid player in this league going forward. Andrew Wiggins took a total step back the last 2 years. He missed time due to personal reasons, and this year he just did not seem like the same player. A career low in points per game, something we haven't seen from him in quite some time. Jordan Poole obviously was shipped out after succumbing to the punch, and a season of controversy with that in the back of his head. He is now a Washington Wizard. With Klay losing his lateral quickness, they had to depend on newer, younger faces that just didn't have the seasoning to be thrust into the lineup. And now the Warriors face a big-time offseason. What are they going to do? It's clear that Klay has lost a step. It would be nice if he stays a Golden State Warrior, but he cannot take a max deal. He can't even take a big-time deal. If he can stay on a veteran's minimum and say that he finishes his career out as a Golden State Warrior, that's fine, but he has to relegate the minutes that he has been given to the younger players. We need more from Jonathan Kuminga. We need more out of Pods. Draymond needs to stay on the court and manage his ego, his temper, all those things. It's going to take new wing talent as well. We've heard rumors of maybe them making a move for Paul George or some talented wing to come over to Golden State to maybe give them a chance to elevate themselves up the Western Conference. But there are so many moves to be made to fix the Golden State Warriors, but it's clear that their days as a dynasty are over. They may make the playoffs in Steph's twilight years, as he is still quite a productive player, but I don't think they're going to be a contender anytime soon. Zion Williamson has been one of the biggest what-ifs in sports. He was drafted in 2019, the number 1 overall pick, with his explosive ability to slam dunk the ball through the rim. But in that play-on game against the Los Angeles Lakers, I saw probably his best game of his career. He not only helped the Pelicans get back into the game after trailing by 18 points in that third quarter, he showed what he could do. Two-way player capability, but just able to hang in the air, make bodily adjustments, because remember, as girthy, as wide as he may be, he doesn't have the vertical stature that normal wings have. He has a great explosive ability to play above the rim, but his ability to hang in the air, make those adjustments when Anthony Davis is coming down to block a shot, or LeBron James, whatever it may have you. He had 40 points on the day, and when he made this explosive drive to the rim to tie up the game, that was his last play, and he hasn't been able to step on the court since. After exiting that game with a mysterious leg injury, the Pelicans faded in the final minutes. The Lakers take the 7th seed, but the New Orleans Pelicans are still able to hang on to the 8th seed to get into the postseason against OKC. Since then, we haven't seen Zion suit up for a game. We know that it's still tricky what this injury may be. It turns out that the scans came back for a potential hamstring injury, and those are very tricky. We don't know if that means how much time he's going to miss. He missed game 1 already, and there is no timetable set for his return. For a player whose career was marred by injury, he missed most of his rookie year, and then in 2021, he had a solid year, got to the All-Star game, and followed that up by missing the entire year. Next year, he has a great start, misses again due to a mysterious hamstring injury. But this year, we thought he put it all together. He lost weight in the middle part of the season, about 25 pounds. He played a career-high 70 games and had amazing play in game. But now this hamstring injury means that he could miss his second ever postseason run with the New Orleans Pelicans since joining the team in 2019. The Pelicans still have a chance. They can give him some time if they are able to extend this series for him to make his playoff debut. But it's a question of whether or not Zion is ever going to suit up for a long-term run with the New Orleans Pelicans. Because right now, no matter what he's done, there's always something in his body, some nagging injury that comes up at the worst possible time that derails what could be a promising season for the New Orleans Pelicans. There was a lot of interesting game ones in the NBA in this opening weekend of the NBA playoffs. The Los Angeles Lakers traveled to Denver to take on the defending champions. This is a rematch of the Western Conference Finals last year. And this time, this Lakers team is very different than last year. Last year, they had a team based off of defense, led by LeBron and AD, with Jared Vanderbilt as one of those great wing players. But this year, they're a little bit more offensive heavy. They have a little bit better three-point shooting. But this time, they just did not match up. In players not named AD and LeBron, and those are mainly the guards, Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, and Rory Hachimura on the wing, they did not do that well in Game 1 against the Denver Nuggets. They struggled, namely D'Angelo Russell, who had an amazing regular season, especially after the All-Star break. But in this game, 6 out of 20, not a lot of great quality shots, a lot of open misses as well, and that's a tall telling sign of how he got played off the court last year in the Western Conference Finals. And so far, the Lakers have struggled against the Denver Nuggets in the last 2 seasons. They have lost 9 straight matchups, including a season sweep in the Western Conference Finals. And now that sweep was a lot closer, even though Denver won all 4 of those games. They still were very competitive in each one of those games. And in this game, we thought they started off really strong. They had a 12-point lead midway through the third quarter. And to start this postseason run, they had a 12-point lead in the second quarter, and you thought off to the races, they are a different team. But mistakes led by casual play by LeBron James and then other role players who didn't have the wherewithal to hang on to the ball. It led to easy transition opportunities to get the Nuggets back into the game, and that led to the Nuggets making another run in the third quarter to put the game essentially out of reach. The Lakers hung around in there, but you could see that they just do not match up against this Denver Nuggets team. Unless there's massive adjustments made in the player rotations or they're able to steal even home court advantage against the Denver Nuggets in Game 2, I don't see anything changing to let me know that the Lakers are serious contenders, and I think this is only going to be a 5-game series at the most. The Knicks handled their business in Game 1 despite Jalen Brunson having a relatively pedestrian game. They got some big contributions from Josh Hart and Miles McBride, who was great off the bench. Those two combined for 9 threes, and when you're having that type of shooting, it can really offset things, especially with Joel Embiid still looking like he's hobbled from that knee injury. He got dinged up towards the end of the regular season. He missed a little bit of time in the third quarter of Game 1, and if he's not 100%, it's going to be very tough sledding for the Philadelphia 76ers. I know that this matchup still gives them a pretty decent chance to make the Eastern Conference Finals, but after Game 1, this was their real opportunity to steal home court advantage. Jalen Brunson, the superstar, is not at his best, and you have Tyrese Maxey doing his thing, 33 points. Just needed someone else to pick up the slack. Batum had his thing in the play-in game, but did not have it in Game 1, and just Tobias Harris was a complete non-factor in this game, and he may be the guy that gets picked on a lot in Philadelphia's shortcomings, as he's been the guy that was picked over Jimmy Butler, as we know, but still, it wasn't enough to overcome what is a fairly deep Knicks team. What a night in the NBA. This is what playoff basketball is all about. We had an amazing doubleheader on TNT with the Knicks and 76ers and the Nuggets and Lakers. Let's talk about what happened with the Nuggets and Lakers. Jamal Murray was cold for much of the night, but caught fire in the fourth quarter for 14 points. And this was en route to his amazing buzzer beater over the outstretched arm of Anthony Davis. And this gives the Nuggets a vital 2-0 series lead. And for the Lakers, you have to feel sick. This was a very winnable game. You were up 20 in the third quarter. You had D'Angelo Russell cooking in that first half and kind of faded in the second half, but still was very productive, made up for that poor shooting performance in Game 1. Anthony Davis was nearly perfect for 3 quarters until he caught that fourth foul, but this was a massive missed opportunity. LeBron also was very productive in this matchup as well, and cut down on the mistakes. I thought they played pretty good defense. They held Jamal Murray in check for much of the game. Jokic was quiet up until the back end of the third quarter, but this was another wasted opportunity, and now this is the 10th consecutive loss in this one-sided rivalry. The Nuggets just simply owned the Los Angeles Lakers, and with this series now shifting to LA, it's looking very, very bleak for this LA team. Jokic can take time off in certain moments of the game, let other guys eat by feeding them with his ability, his Jedi mind mastery tricks with assisting and distributing the ball. With Michael Porter Jr., who held up and kept the Nuggets afloat while Jamal Murray and Jokic were kind of struggling in that middle portion of the game. And then Jamal Murray is kind of known as the closer alongside Jokic because that mid-range game really helped Jamal Murray get into the flow of things late. It just felt like that the Nuggets just have a different gear than the Lakers, and the Lakers can throw the kitchen sink, they can throw haymakers, but the Nuggets just simply eat it and throw back a vicious knockout punch. And it's not over yet, 2-0, you can still come back, and no team in this series has won on the road just yet, so it's still very much a series, but it definitely looks like a dire situation in Game 3. It's do or die. If they go down 0-3, I think this is another sweep, and the Nuggets are going to move on in a relatively short fashion. The earlier part of this doubleheader, we had another Game 2 thriller. This was the Knicks and 76ers. You could see that Joel Embiid is fairly hobbled by this knee injury. In that second half, in the third quarter especially, you could see that he is lumbering. He is struggling to get back on defense. and still is blocking shots, getting rebounds, and still finding ways to attack the rim when he can. But obviously he's settling for a lot of jumpers because he doesn't have that explosiveness. But credit to Tyrese Maxey, because he was the guy that really handled the brute of the scoring load, especially in the second half. He is just so lightning quick and very explosive. 35 points, replicating a similar matchup that he had in the game 1 where he had 33 points. I thought this time he was cooking yet again, pick and roll, slashing to the rim, excellent on the jump shots as well. And when you had that late fourth quarter swing where Maxey was just absolutely cooking, getting everything he wanted, and you're holding Jalen Brunson to another pedestrian performance, this is a massive opportunity for Philadelphia. You have it right there. You have a 4-point lead under 50 seconds to go. Kyle Lowry gets the defensive rebound. He draws the foul, makes 1 of 2, still a 5-point game. But after that, Pandora's box opens up. The following sequence, Jalen Brunson gets a soft bounce. Okay, still down 2. I have to also get a stop. But they decide to swarm Maxey on the inbound pass. There was a lot of contact there. It was weird because the contact felt like it was impeding Maxey to get a clean look at the ball to grasp it. And he was basically getting assaulted as well, but somehow lost the ball. Nick Nurse, you could see, is gesturing for a timeout, was not granted it, and they've already filed a grievance after the end of the game. And you could see then recovered, missed chance by Dante DiVincenzo, but later, after a Hartenstein rebound, back out to DiVincenzo, he executes, puts the Knicks up in the lead for good, and the Knicks don't look back ever since. They finish off the possession, they get the rebound. Credit to Hartenstein again for that big block on Tyrese Maxey, as he was looking like he was going unopposed to the rim, but used every bit of that 7'2" frame to swat that ball away. Defensive rebound to OG, game over, and the Knicks are escaping MSG with a 2-0 series lead, and again the pressure goes all the way back to Philadelphia as they are down 0-2. And again, this series is not over either. They played the Knicks very well in 2 consecutive games, but we don't know whether or not that's going to translate, because the way it's looking, Joel Embiid is going to need as much rest as possible. They don't play again until Thursday, so they do get an extra day. That's the nice thing now with these NBA schedule, is that with the travel day involved, you do get somewhat of an extra day of rest. But it's looking like the Sixers just cannot execute late. I do like the improvements, especially what Nick Nurse has done on the defensive side of the ball, but there's still some issues because there are 2 massive missed opportunities. Jalen Brunson still hasn't really made his mark in this series. They're relying on the role players to pick up his slack, and they're still finding ways to win. And that's a big credit to Tom Thibodeau and his squad. The Knicks are in firm control of this, but again, remains to be seen if they're able to win on the road. But again, if Joel Embiid is hobbled, I don't think this is going to be a long series at all. I'm worried about the Phoenix Suns. If their big 3 of Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant don't have a perfect game and they fire on all cylinders, this is going to be a short series. And yet again, Game 2 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, their defense completely smothered the Phoenix Suns. In a game where Devin Booker has a better night than he had in Game 1, Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant were very quiet. They combined for 17 out of 45 for just 52 points. And this is a huge missed opportunity where, just like with the Knicks and Jalen Brunson's been struggling, Anthony Edwards struggled for just 15 points on 3 of 12 shooting. But the Minnesota Timberwolves have proven that they're a lot more than that. Jaden McDaniels, a guy who is probably their best wing defender and missed last year's postseason run, has been integral to the Minnesota Timberwolves so far this postseason. He was their leading scorer on Tuesday night and played excellent defense on Bradley Beal and Devin Booker for certain stretches of the game, and they got notable contributions. Mike Conley, the veteran, had 18 points, and Rudy Gobert had 18 himself. And when those 2 guys are chipping in anything more than 12 to 15 points, That's more the production than what you think you're going to get out of those two guys, at least offensively. Cat is still working himself back into the lineup, but still was solid in impacting the game in other facets. And like I said, it just feels that Phoenix is struggling to maintain pace. Their depth issues are clear, and with Grayson Allen missing most of the game after tweaking his ankle, the offensive production was next to nothing. Eric Gordon is a decent guard at this point in his career, but he's not going to give you a lot of production. And now with the series shifting over to Phoenix, absolutely they could get a game, if not two, but it's going to be very tricky. I just don't see them making this a long series. They may get a game, but it's going to be a pretty short series at this point. I don't have a lot of confidence. Kevin Durant just seems very quiet. Even last year and series before when he was with Brooklyn, where he just doesn't seem to have that type of aggression to truly take over a game. And I don't know if this is just his new mentality or not, just that killer instinct I just don't see in him now. He's just kind of nonchalantly there. His impact isn't really notable for the Phoenix Suns. I'm sure Anthony Edwards isn't going to have the type of pedestrian shooting night as he did on Tuesday. And in their next matchup, I'm sure he's going to go back to the mean and be very productive on all facets of the game. The Dallas Mavericks responded after a disappointing game one where the Clippers were missing Kawhi Leonard, and without that defensive presence, the Mavs struggled in that game. That second quarter, they only scored 8 points, and they went on a run and never looked back. Game two, the Mavericks were keeping pace with the Clippers all night long. In that fourth quarter, they hit a flurry of three-pointers to go up on a 14-0 run, and that was giving them the lead for good. I thought that Luka and Kyrie are a match made in heaven. They're playing off each other great, but still nothing spectacular. I mean, their first two games, no gaudy stat lines, not even the best efficient of nights, but they're getting the job done, and now they accomplished what they needed to do. They got a 1-1 split with this series heading back to Dallas. And to think that they can play even better than what they have been so far in LA is kind of scary. They got notable contributions from PJ Washington, who I thought was great, especially with the three ball. Absolutely, they'll need a little bit more when the series heads back to Dallas, and I'm sure those role players are going to step it up another notch. And if the goal is they want to hold home court advantage, they're going to need to win games 3 and 4 to make this a 3-1 series heading back to LA for game 5. For the Clippers, Kawhi's first game in almost 3 weeks, I thought he was decent on the defensive end, 4 steals, that's pretty good, but offensively, clearly very rusty. His jumpers were landing short, and he was probably taking a little bit too many jump shots, not the best spots either. And the Clippers overall were kind of deferring to him. I understand you have to let your guy get involved, feed him a little bit, but there were certain times where you think that James and Paul George, they need to take a little bit more aggression and let the offense flow through them, as they've been established pieces in this Clippers offense for the last few weeks in Kawhi's absence. Russell Westbrook, again, looked really out of control for certain moments in the game. I thought a couple times he got into the lane just fine, but when he takes jumpers, especially ill-advised jumpers and inopportune times in the game, it just shows why he is in the position at this point in his career. You need a little bit more out of Norman Powell as well. You think that's your Energizer Bunny off the bench. Just 2 out of 10 from the three-point line, disappointing stat line from him. And you're going to need more because you dropped the home game, and you're going to have to fish out a game once the series hits over to Dallas. The role players are going to have to step it up, and it's going to be a very interesting series. I know this is going to be a very long, drawn-out series. No way is this thing over, but certainly advantage Dallas for right now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Please do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, you can take a look at our Instagram and TikTok pages, also here on YouTube, and our playlist for clips, for shortened versions and specific topics that I talked about in today's pod. The full audio you can get on Spotify. All links are in the description. Thank you, Joey, so much for editing this podcast, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.